Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. What would you do if 60 strangers showed up on your property with folding chairs and a microphone insisting they had every right to be there? That is exactly what happened when my HOA decided my private lake was their community property. The question is, who really owns the land and what happens when you mess with the wrong property owner? And the first one is titled, HOA designates my lake as public HOA property and hosts 6-person meeting on my land. So I need to give you some background first. I own a 50-acre property in what used to be a pretty rural area outside of town. The centerpiece of my land is this beautiful 8-acre natural lake that has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather bought this property decades ago, and when he passed, it went to my dad, and when dad died 5 years ago, it came to me. The lake is completely on my property, not touching any property lines, totally contained within my boundaries. I live in a modest house not far from the beautiful lake shore. It's nothing fancy, just a comfortable 3-bedroom place that my dad built in the 80s. The lake has always been private. We've had family reunions there, I fish it regularly, and my kids learn to swim in it. There's a small dock and a couple of picnic tables that my dad built, and it is my sanctuary. Now, here's where things get interesting though. About 4 years ago, developers started building a subdivision adjacent to my property. Nothing too crazy, just nice middle-class homes on half-acre lots. The development is called Lakeside HOA, which I always thought was kind of funny since they don't actually have lake access. They just named it that because you can see my lake from some of the houses. When the first families started moving in, everything was fine. Nice people, we would wave to each other, no problems, but as more houses got built and the neighborhood filled up, things started changing. About 2 years ago, they formed an HOA. Now, I want to be clear, my property predates their subdivision by decades, and I never signed anything, never agreed to be part of any HOA, and never received any documentation about joining. My property is completely separate from their development. Different street address, different legal description, and totally independent, but apparently some of the new residents thought my lake looked real nice from their backyards, so then it started small. I would occasionally see people walking their dogs along the edge of my property near the lake. Then I noticed some kids had built a rope swing on one of my trees overhanging the water. I didn't make a big deal about it at first, I mean, kids being kids, you know. But then more people started showing up. One Saturday morning in June, I'm having my coffee on my back porch when I see this woman I don't recognize setting up what looks like a family picnic right on my lake shore. She's got tables, chairs, a grill, the whole 9 yards, so I walk down there. "Excuse me," I said politely, "but this is actually private property and you're on my land." She looked at me like I had grown a second head. "Oh, you must be mistaken. This is community property. I'm on the HOA board and we have designated this as a public recreational area for the HOA residents." I just stared at her for a second. "Ma'am, I think there's been some confusion here. This is my property. I own this lake and all the land around it. You're currently standing on my property without permission." She got this smug look on her face and said, "Sir, I don't know who told you that, but you're wrong. The HOA has done a property survey and this lake and surrounding area is designated as a common area for the community. If you're a resident of the HOA, you should have received the documentation about this." "Well, I'm not a resident of your HOA," I told her. "I live right up there." I pointed to my house. "And I've owned this property for 5 years, my family for over 70 years. This is definitely private property." She just rolled her eyes and said, "Look, I don't have time to argue with you. I'm setting up for my daughter's birthday party and we reserve this space through proper channels. If you have a problem with it, you can contact the HOA. At this point, I'm actually getting pretty irritated. "Ma'am, you need to pack up your stuff and leave. This is private property and you are trespassing." "I'm calling the cops," she said, pulling out her phone. "This is harassment." "Go ahead," I told her. "Call them. I will be happy to show them my property deed." She made the call and about 20 minutes later a sheriff's deputy showed up. The woman, I found out later her name was Tiffany and she was the HOA president, immediately started complaining about how I was harassing her and trying to prevent her from using community property. The deputy listened to both of us and then asked to see my documentation. "Ma'am," he told Tiffany, "this gentleman is correct. This is private property. You need to pack up and leave." Tiffany went ballistic. "That's impossible. The HOA wouldn't have designated this as community property if it wasn't the case. Someone made a mistake." The deputy was very patient and said, "Ma'am, the HOA doesn't have the authority to designate someone else's private property as community property. This gentleman owns this land. You need to leave now or I will have to cite you for trespassing." She packed up her stuff, but she was not happy about it. As she was leaving, she turned back to me and said, "This is not over. The HOA is gonna look into this and we will get to the bottom of it." I thought that would be the end of it, but boy was I wrong. Over the next few weeks, I started getting letters from the HOA. The first one was pretty official looking, addressed to HOA resident and informing me about new community guidelines for the use of common areas, including the lake. It talked about reserving time slots for events, keeping the area clean, no alcohol, no loud music after 9 p.m, that sort of thing. Of course, I just threw it away. The second letter was more direct though. It was addressed to me personally and stated that there had been confusion about property boundaries, but that their research had confirmed that the lake was indeed community property and I needed to stop interfering with residents' use of the area. I called the number on the letter and asked to speak with someone about the property issue, and they transferred me to Tiffany. "Oh, it's you," she said when I explained who I was. "Look, we have done our research and we know what we are talking about. That lake has been used by the community for years." "It's been used by my family for 70 years, I told her, "and I have the deed to prove that I own it." "Deeds can be wrong," she said. "We have consulted with our lawyers and they assured us that we have community rights to that water feature." "Your lawyers are wrong," I said. "And if people don't stop trespassing on my property, I'm gonna start calling the police every time." "You do that," she said and hung up. And well, the letters kept coming. They got progressively more threatening, talking about legal action now and interference with community rights. And one letter even suggested that I was grandfathered in as a lake user, but that I couldn't prevent other residents from accessing it. But then the phone calls started. Different HOA board members calling to discuss the situation, and every conversation was the same. They insisted they had rights to the lake, I insisted it was my private property, they threatened legal action, I told them to bring it on. Around this time, I decided to be proactive. I contacted a property lawyer and had him send a cease and desist letter to the HOA, clearly stating that the lake was private property and any continued trespassing would result in legal action. I also had private property no trespassing signs made and posted them around the lake. This really pissed them off. Tiffany called me the day after I put up the signs. "You cannot put up signs on community property. That's vandalism." "It's my property. I can put up whatever signs I want," I told her. "We will see about that," she said. 2 days later, the signs were gone. All of them just vanished overnight. I put up new signs, but they disappeared again within 48 hours. This went on for weeks. I would put up signs, they would disappear, and I started getting nastier letters from the HOA about so-called illegal signage and destruction of community property. Finally, I'd had enough. I called the sheriff's office and filed a formal complaint about the ongoing trespassing and theft of my signs. They assigned a deputy to do a property check and take my statement. Deputy Volker, or Volker, was very thorough. He looked at all my documentation, walked the property boundaries with me, and took photos of everything. He also gave me some advice saying, "Here's what I would do," he said. "Set up some security cameras. If they are stealing your signs or trespassing, you will have evidence. Right now it's just a he said she said situation." So I bought a few trail cameras and set them up around the lake, motion activated, night vision, the works. Within a week, I had footage of HOA board members removing my signs. I also had footage of numerous families using my lake, swimming, fishing, and even having picnics. Some of the videos showed people dumping trash and even leaving beer cans around. I took the footage to Deputy Volker and he was pretty amazed. "That's definitely theft and trespassing," he said. "How do you want to handle this?" I told him I wanted to file charges against anyone I could identify in the videos, and he helped me go through the footage, and we identified Tiffany and 2 other HOA board members in the act of removing signs. We also identified several families trespassing. The deputy went to the HOA and informed them that charges were being filed against them. He also delivered another cease and desist letter from my lawyer, and you would think this would calm things down, right? Nope. Instead, it escalated everything. I started getting certified letters from the HOA's lawyer demanding I stop harassing community members and threatening to sue for interference with community rights and preventing access to common areas. My lawyer laughed when I showed him the letters. They don't really have a leg to stand on, he said, but if they want to waste money on a lawsuit, just let them. We will countersue for trespassing, theft, harassment, and legal fees. This is where things get really crazy. One Friday evening in late August, I'm grilling dinner on my back porch when I hear cars pulling up. Lots of cars. I look towards the lake and see people parking along the road and walking onto my property. At first I think it's just another family gathering, but then I see more cars. And more. Within an hour, there are probably 60 people on my property around the lake. They've got folding chairs set up in rows, a podium, a microphone, and speaker system. Someone set up a registration table. It looks like they are having some kind of official meeting. I walk down there to see what is going on. Excuse me, I say to the woman at the registration table. What's happening here? Oh, this is the quarterly HOA general meeting, she says cheerfully. All residents should have received notice. Well, this is on my private property, I tell her. You cannot hold a meeting here. She looks confused and calls over Tiffany, who I recognize from our previous encounters. Tiffany sees me and gets this look like she just ate something sour. What do you want? I want to know why you are holding a meeting on my private property without permission. This is community property, she says loudly so everyone around can hear. We've been over this. You don't own this lake. By now, several people are staring at us. Tiffany just continues talking, raising her voice. This gentleman seems to think he owns community property and has been harassing residents who try to use this public space. We have tried to work with him, but he continues to interfere with community activities. People are now starting to murmur, and I can tell they are buying into her story. I'm getting looks like I'm the bad guy here. Folks, I say, raising my voice, I need everyone to understand something. This is private property. I own this land and the lake. I have the deed to prove it. You are all currently trespassing. Tiffany rolls her eyes dramatically. He has been saying that for months. We have had it researched by lawyers. This is definitely community property. Well, then you won't mind if I call the sheriff, right? I say, pulling out my phone. Go ahead, Tiffany says smugly. We are not doing anything wrong. So then I call 911 and explain that there are 60 people trespassing on my property holding an unauthorized meeting. And by the way, guys, let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation if 60 entitled people were trespassing on your private property. And by the way, while you're at it, please don't forget to like the video, because it would help me tremendously if we could reach 1,000 likes. Thank you so much. The dispatcher said they will send someone out. While we were waiting, the HOA tried to continue their meeting. Tiffany gets up at the podium and starts talking about community issues, upcoming events, budget discussions, and she keeps shooting dirty looks in my direction. About 20 minutes later, 3 sheriff vehicles pull up. Deputy Volker gets out of one of them, along with 2 other deputies I don't recognize. Deputy Volker walks over to me first and asked, "This is your property?" "Yep," I tell him, "and I did not give permission for this meeting." He nods and walks over to Tiffany at the podium. "Ma'am, I need to speak with you." The whole meeting stops. Tiffany walks over with a couple of other board members. "This gentleman says you're on his private property without permission," Deputy Volker says. "This is community property," Tiffany insists. "We've been through this before. He doesn't own this land." "Ma'am, I've seen his deed. This is definitely his property. You and everyone here are trespassing." Another board member pipes up and says, "Our lawyer assured us we have community rights to this area." Deputy Volker sighs, "Sir, I don't know what your lawyer told you, but this is private property and I need everyone to pack up and leave immediately." "This is ridiculous," Tiffany shouts. "We are not leaving. This is our community space." "Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, I will have to arrest you for trespassing." At this point, the other 55 to 60 people are realizing that this is serious. Most of them start packing up their chairs and heading for their cars, but Tiffany and a few of the board members are digging in. "I'm calling our lawyer," one of them says. "You can call whoever you want," Deputy Volker tells him, "but you need to do it from somewhere else. This is private property and you are trespassing." It takes another 30 minutes, but eventually everyone leaves. Tiffany was the last to go, and she was furious. "This is not over," she tells me as she's walking away. "The HOA is going to sue you for everything you are worth." After everyone is gone, Deputy Volker sticks around to talk to me. "That was something else," he says. "I've never seen an HOA try to hold a meeting on someone else's property before. What can I do about this?" I ask him. They are not gonna stop. Well, you could sue them, he says. What they just did, organizing a 60-person meeting on your property without permission, that's a pretty serious violation. You might also want to think about getting an attorney to send them something stronger than a cease and desist. That weekend, I called my lawyer and told him everything that happened, and he was absolutely flabbergasted. They held a 60-person meeting on your property, he said, without permission? After you've already told them it is private property and filed police reports? Yeah. And they've been stealing your signs and ignoring cease and desist letters? Yep. He was quiet for a minute. This is actually pretty serious. What they are doing could be considered criminal trespassing, theft, harassment, and intentional interference with property rights. You could probably sue them for damages and get an injunction. What kind of damages, I asked? Well, let's see. So they've been using your property without permission for months. If this was a rental property, what would you charge for lake access? They've also damaged your quiet enjoyment of your property, stole your signs, and now they've essentially held a commercial event on your land without permission. Plus the legal fees, of course. How much are we talking about? It's hard to say without doing research, but probably tens of thousands of dollars. Maybe more if we can prove ongoing harassment and intentional conduct. I told him to go ahead and file suit. The next week my lawyer filed a comprehensive lawsuit against the HOA and several individual board members. We sued for trespassing, theft, harassment, intentional interference with property rights, and unjust enrichment. We asked for actual damages, punitive damages, legal fees, and a permanent injunction preventing them from coming on my property. The lawsuit hit them like a freight train. My lawyer told me later that their attorney called him within 24 hours of being served trying to negotiate a settlement, but we were not interested in settling at that point. We wanted this to go to court. The discovery phase was amazing. We subpoenaed all the HOA records and communications, and what we found was incredible. So it turns out the HOA had never actually done any legal research on the property. They had never consulted with lawyers about their rights to the lake. Tiffany had basically just decided that the lake should be community property and convinced everyone else to go along with it. There were discussions about our lake and how to deal with the difficult property owner. They had actually budgeted money for lake maintenance and discussed building a bathhouse and expanded dock on my property. Even better though, we were forwarded leaked emails between board members where they explicitly acknowledged that I probably did own the property, but they figured if they just acted like it was theirs long enough, they could establish some kind of adverse possession claim. One email from Tiffany to another board member said, even if he technically owns it, if we use it openly for long enough, we can probably claim it legally. My cousin's a paralegal, and she says possession is 9/10 of the law. And of course, my lawyer was practically salivating when he saw these documents. The other side tried to claim that there had been an innocent misunderstanding and that they were relying on professional advice, but when we deposed their board members, it became clear that they had never actually consulted any professionals, that their position transcripts were brutal, and Tiffany in particular came across as arrogant and entitled. When asked directly if she had ever seen my property deed, she said no. When asked if she had ever done any legal research on property boundaries, she said no. When asked what gave her the right to hold meetings on my property, she said the community needed space and it was not being used. The case went to trial about 8 months later. It was a bench trial, just a judge and no jury. The HOA's lawyer tried to argue that there had been an innocent mistake here and that they had acted in good faith, but the evidence was overwhelming. We had video footage of them stealing signs, emails showing that they knew I owned the property, and testimony from multiple witnesses about their aggressive behavior. The judge was not impressed with their arguments. In his ruling, he found that the HOA and individual board members had committed willful trespassing, theft, and harassment. So he awarded me $45,000 in actual damages based on fair rental value for lake access, $25,000 in punitive damages, and $30,000 in legal fees. He also issued a permanent injunction prohibiting anyone associated with the HOA from setting foot on my property. But here's the best part. The judge also ruled that the individual board members were personally liable for the damages because they had acted willfully and in bad faith and beyond the scope of their authority. This meant that Tiffany and the other board members couldn't just pay the judgment from HOA funds, they were personally on the hook for $100,000. The aftermath was beautiful. Within 2 months of the judgment, Tiffany and her husband had to put their house up for sale to pay their portion of the damages. 2 other board members also ended up selling their homes. The HOA itself went into financial crisis because their insurance would not cover the damages. Willful misconduct exclusion. Several families in the subdivision sued the HOA board for mismanagement and breach of fiduciary duty. The whole HOA ended up dissolving about a year later, but wait, it gets even better. About 6 months after the judgment, I get a call from a real estate developer, and it turns out all the drama with the HOA had made the subdivision less desirable, and property values had dropped significantly. The developer was interested in buying several of the lots at below market prices to build rental properties. And of course, he also made me an offer on my lake frontage, not to buy it, but to lease access rights for a private fishing club he was planning. The lease payment, $50,000 per year, so not only did I get $100,000 in damages from the lawsuit, but I also got a long-term income stream from the very lake that the HOA tried to steal from me. And the next one is a fantastic malicious compliance story that is titled, "My car is worth very little." Okay then, prove it, in great detail. So my old car got into a very small bump that was just bad enough to crack something critical, which meant repairing it would just not be economical. My insurance people said they would give me its market value, which according to them is $5,000. I did some research of my own, a big Excel spreadsheet was involved and lots of averaging, and found it was actually closer to $7,500. I didn't want to go full Karen on them from the start though. I'm sure there's a logical, reasonable, compliant explanation, I just have to find it. It went on for weeks, y'all. I've shortened it a lot. I found a car X worth $8,000 and car Y worth $6,000. How come they are still more than what you quoted me? Them, we cannot consider the first one. It's in a different state. In my country, this is like saying different astrology, but we will give you the price of the second one. They are both interstate. Why can you still consider the second one? Also, I've just noticed the second one has a worse odometer than mine. Are you saying a car in worse condition than mine is still worth more than what you quoted me? Them, look, it's a really good price, we didn't even take into account the delamination. Then by all means take the delamination into account, as long as you can prove the price difference. I'm actually begging you to throw the book at me and confront me with legal jargon. Give me something. Them, silence for several days. Look, government body says if I don't hear back within another 2 weeks, I'm allowed to file a complaint. I understand you're busy, so I will make it 3. I've also made a complaint to your customer service department, making it clear I'm looking for either A, $7,500 according to my research, or B, a good reason why I should accept less. Receipts, laws, terms of service paperwork, that sort of thing. If it takes a while to put together the facts, that's okay. Letting me know that's what you're doing is fine too. If I cannot get any of what I've asked for, I will have to ask the government body if they can help sort this out. And let me tell you, they responded within 5 minutes, letting me know I was being transferred to a different representative. The new rep offered me all the hard facts I could ever hope for and my $7,500, with a note that the price is only guaranteed if I don't go to that government body. And by the way, I was not planning on it, now I have my facts. And the next one is a brand new, satisfying petty revenge story, and it is titled, "My boss refused to promote me or give me reasonable raises, so I developed skills on the company dime that got me a 100% raise at another company." So early in my career, I worked as an engineer for a defense contractor for about 4 years, getting my typical 2 to 4% raises and standard promotions that take years and years to qualify for. I realized that in my current role, I was pretty much maxed out for the foreseeable future and would be scraping by for years more. So I tried to get on the management track and got given a project engineer position to prove myself. I managed a team of 4 engineers, a designer and 2 admins, and we designed and manufactured a system that made $1.6 million in sales in our first year of work. We got the company a patent and were nominated by the USAF and became finalists as DoD Contractor Technical Team of the Year. I don't recall the exact wording, and we were flown to DC for a big award ceremony. I spent 100 days away from my family that year, traveling to test locations, customers, vendors, etc. It was brutal, but we were wildly successful. When annual performance reviews came in, mine was 10 out of 10. I was thrilled, and then I found out one of my team members, who had a different manager, was promoted early to a senior position and that I did not. And I just got the standard 3% raise again. And of course, I was livid. I had a meeting with my boss, and his response was that he didn't think my team member deserved a promotion or a big raise, but he was not their boss, so basically, I should just try real hard again and we will see next year. Well, screw that. I basically quit and just barely worked my 40 hours and went home. I never traveled unless I really wanted to, I never stayed late, I took almost every Friday off to burn through my leave, and I took all my sick days, etc. My mental health was much better, and the only thing I really did extra was take advantage of the education budget our group had, but rarely got used. My previously promoted coworker, who I really liked personally, started taking MBA evening classes that the company reimbursed him for, but they came with obligations to stay there for X amount of years. They also had a nice budget for software training, so we both signed up for FEA and 3D modeling classes. We traveled around together taking these classes and building our resumes. About a month after the classes were finished, I secretly started applying for jobs that required those specific skills and quickly got hired for a position with a base annual income that was 200% my existing rate, plus it paid overtime. I put in my notice and my boss was really upset. "We just paid for you to travel all over to learn these new skills that we need. Don't you have any loyalty or guilt? How much are they paying you? Let's see if we can match it." "That's more than I make." It was, and with overtime, I made about 3 times the following year for a competitor. Life-changing good times. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe to the channel and I will see you again tomorrow.